Hey, welcome to our immigration podcast. We cover all things immigration in the United States, and we put this together every week. All right, this week we're talking about a couple of stories in the news. We'll be talking about a new vaccination entry requirement. We've also got a story for you about the new visa program. This is an entrepreneur startup program. Got some details for you on that. We also have got some updates on the H-2B visa, as well as some news on the H-1B registration period. And finally, we have two stories about immigration in the news, one about a H-1B family that's suffering some woes, and we've got a story from the Biden administration about an administration official named Andrea Flores. We'll put the timestamps down below so you can click ahead if you want to just jump into a story. But as always, we'd love a subscribe, a like, or share. It helps the YouTube algorithm, and it gets our free information out to tons more people. All right, let's go. So DHS announced on their website that they will now require a proof of vaccination for land ports of entry. It's a very specific announcement. Proof of COVID vaccination for a land entry from Mexico or from Canada. That means you have to have a fully vaccinated card showing the date and stamp with signatures of that vaccination. And right now, all we know is vaccination is required. We have nothing about a booster or anything of that sort. Now, keep in mind that this is literally if you're crossing the border without an airplane. That's number one. And number two, it's only if you're crossing the border from Canada or Mexico. If you're crossing the border either two venues, this new vaccination requirement is in place and will be starting, I believe, January 22nd of 2022. So that's new information, and we'll have more for you as it comes about and as the administration releases information about what's happening and why they're doing this, because I'm a little bit confused. If airplanes don't require us to fly in that way, I'm not sure why we're doing it across the border. And frankly, the United States has more higher incidences of COVID than Canada by far, because the vaccination rate in Canada is so high that they don't have the spread that we do. So, all right, it's news, it's coming out. Let's see what happens, and we'll have some feedback for you as we get more on it. All right, I want to jump into this next story because it's kind of big, and it's about a entirely new visa, apparently called a W visa. All right, this visa has been proposed, and it's got some details that are really, really good. It's an entrepreneurship visa, and essentially it's for individuals that are in a startup entity, and they own, the minimum they need to own is over 10% equity in the startup entity. And this new law, it's a bill right now being proposed, will allow these individuals to get the visa. I'm going to wind back a little bit and explain what's going on. Essentially, the Senate has passed some legislation, and the House has come together with a whole new idea that they are putting forward to add to this bill about this new visa program. And so the House of Representatives has a new program, and it's basically going to be for immigrant entrepreneurs and immigrants with a PhD in STEM programs. If these measures become law, if this comes into law, the impact could be far-reaching, because we're talking about specific kinds of visas that give you the permission to live and work in the United States. Now let's get into some more details. So the United States does not have a startup category visa. As you might know, the U.S. proposed things like in the Obama administration, they had a policy for H-1Bs to be entrepreneur H-1Bs. Obama actually completed a advanced parole program or a parole program where entrepreneurs can come to the United States, and Biden has actually opened that program, saying we'll let entrepreneurs or investors come to the United States under this, what's called an advanced parole. This program is by the House of Representatives, and it's completely game-changing. Essentially, it's going to be anybody who is an entrepreneur can get 3 years as a W visa, okay, if they possess an ownership interest of 10% or more in a new startup entity, and they're going to play a central or active role in the management or operation of the startup entity. And aside from that, they have to obviously show they have the knowledge, skills, and abilities and experience to substantially assist. So there's going to be some background information or qualifications required. And they have to show, this is the tougher part, during the 18 months before you file the visa, that they've received at least $250,000 in investments from qualified investors. It probably means a Regulation D investor, or at least $100,000 in a qualifying government grant or award. All right. So clearly, they've got details here, and I really like that because it lets us lay out where this is going and who qualifies. This investor minimum cap of $250,000 is actually pretty good. A lot of startup entities get that and more from new VC. Okay, I also like the idea of a 10% ownership. This really is taking into effect the actual world we live in. A lot of VCs come in with startup capital, and they'll jump really quickly into a 50+% position. Okay, and it's not unknown for venture capital to, if they're really putting in all the capital, they've got a proven product, to really be up at 70 or even 80% ownership. So a lot of times these owners who start up with the idea and get the product to an advanced state, by the time they get to the part where they're actually moving forward with something, they are in a diminished ownership capacity. So this 10% number is great. The $250,000 investment is also really great. And I see something that fits with reality. I like what I see. The bill would also allow for the W visa to get an additional 3 years after the first 3 years. Now, in this one, it's even better. They say you could be at a 5% ownership rate or higher, okay? So there is this understanding that as a process moves forward and more capital comes in, the ownership interest could drop. And this shows a real connection to reality. And I like that they've done this, and I'm really impressed with what we've got here. Now, the PhD for STEM fields is going to allow U.S. employers to get a lot of advantage by hiring PhDs. PhDs in this W visa that can also lead to residence is also a very, very big deal. So some of the studies already show that there are almost 10,000 people who could benefit from this W visa. What we're seeing is a very well thought out program that suits the reality we live in, and truthfully starts to allow the United States to compete for PhD talent and entrepreneur talent. Something that I'm a big fan of, and something I think has been missing in immigration law at this time. It's a very big area that, frankly, China has been doing a lot to advance their ability to capture this labor force, and I like this forward-thinking program. We'll have more for you as the regulations get proposed and it goes through a process of getting actually approved. Of course, this is a bill. We need to see the bill get passed. And again, we'll update you on that as we get more information. All right. Okay, we've got some other news about the H-2B visa. DHS announced just this last week that a new 20,000 additional H-2B visas will be coming out. These temporary visas are going to be for individuals who are here. It's for the first half of 2022, and it's for employers that can show certain kind of harm if they don't get these additional workers. So H-2B's got an additional 20,000 workers coming out this year in the first half of 2022. And as background, this matches what happened last year, seeing the high demand. The administration already allotted, I think it was 22,000 last year, but that was very specific from Central America only. This 20,000 is wide open. It fits right into the H-2B cap, which is coming up already. DHS also announced that the H-1B lottery will begin. The registration period for the H-1B is going to go from March 1 of this year to March 18th. Let me repeat, March 1 to March 18th. During that time, the system is going to be open for employers to register for the H-1B lottery. It's a pretty simple process. We've talked about it in some of our videos. If you need help with it, you can always hire an attorney. You can do it yourself. But the H-1B lottery, you need to register March 1 to March 18th. All right, outside of that, we do have some news about some stories that have been going on in immigration. The number one thing we want to talk about would be this family, which hit the news recently. And it was an individual here from India on an H-1B, and he'd been here 6 or 7 years on H-1B. He had been in the process of doing everything. He's done everything right. Unfortunately, he got sick. He got sick, and he knew that he wasn't going to make it. He tried hard to help his family out, to finish his green card process, but he passed away. He passed away, and at that time, what happened was his family tried to get themselves situated to continue to live in the United States. He had a son who was 20 years old in college, who'd been here since he was a young man, and his wife was here, and they had some other kids. Unfortunately, they were unable to do anything, and they had to leave the United States. it kind of made the rounds through Twitter, and I did comment a little bit on Twitter. One of the things that came out of this is the simple fact that there's a law called 204L. 204L is an immigration law that says if a petitioner dies, for example, if you're married and your husband files for you and your husband's a citizen and he passes away, 204L says you can still do that green card case if he filed for you, and there's a specific way to do it. Well, 204L also applies to employment-based cases, and that means that 204L says that if your employer filed a case for you, but you're no longer, if you pass away, you're not alive, that case can continue for the family members, okay? So it's important to know this. It's important to know there's an opportunity. Unfortunately for this family, because of the backlog on EB2 and EB3 for India, they can't necessarily just stay here and continue on that case. They have to actually leave, and they have to try to bring that case back again because they will run out of status. So it is kind of difficult to use when you have an Indian national. And this story, this tragedy is really kind of sad because it shows us a little bit about how immigration is just, it's so focused on numbers and a very specific process, and it's really got very little flexibility for, you know, things that happened in human life. These are normal things and they happen, but this family is definitely suffering because they're going to go back to India without any status in the United States. Our final story today is a little bit of insight on what's happening with the Biden administration. So, as you know, Biden administration has been in power for a year, and we are immigration focused. We want to see some action in immigration. We've seen some movement, we've seen some conversation, but we have not actually seen some of the big changes we were hoping will happen. Just recently, New Yorker had a very big story about an individual. Her name is Andrea Flores. Andrea Flores is a former immigration policy analyst and attorney who got hired in the Biden administration and came on board in January last year. She hit the ground running. She had a very specific job. And the story talks about her disappointments as she went through this process and tried to get the administration to move in the right direction. And the hardest part here that we kind of glean from this story is that, you know, she left the administration a little bit unhappy and disappointed about what she'd found. But what I found that's really, really difficult is her story is that there's nobody close to the president that has a real understanding of immigration. And a lot of the policy is coming down. It's coming from the really top staff, like the chief of staff and the Domestic Policy Council and some of like the National Security Advisor and all the individuals she had to work with. None of them had any experience with immigration. And so it's not really on their radar. And as a direct result of that, some of the programs that kind of elevate to the president's level where people are trying to advocate for things, we're finding out now that these kind of advisors don't see those as important and are not assigning a kind of importance to it. And they look at it through a lens that's very, very specific. They look at it through either a political lens, whether it's going to make the president look good or an advantage in some electoral way. And they look at it through this national security lens as well. But they're really not looking at it the way we do, which is the world of employers, the world of people waiting, the world of people suffering in a way when they really tried to embrace the American dream by following a legal process, came to the United States legally, are in status, and are working for U.S. companies that want to give them a green card. We don't see any understanding of that, and that's a huge disappointment. And it kind of confirms for me a lot of what I've seen as a result of the policies that have come out. You know, the things that have come out, the changes that have come out, they don't seem to be addressing the major issues. They seem to be a patchwork of small things just to placate sort of the world of immigration, but really not do anything. I'm very disappointed. I don't think the president is focused on this, and I don't think his staff or team really have an ear for the concerns that exist in the immigration world, immigration community. Obviously, we hope for more, but this news article does break some ground for us to let us know that things are not really happening with immigration in the forefront at all in the Biden administration. All right. We're going to wrap it up quick with a couple of questions. We've got a question: can I earn money from my monetized YouTube account while on H-1B? Well, you know what? I get this question every week or so, and it's a really tough question, okay? Bottom line is, in immigration, you have an H-1B, you can only earn money through employment through your U.S. employer, the petitioner, all right? Now, if you earn money on the side, and you do that in a way that's not employment, you'll be okay. So passive investments, stock market, renting out property, those tend to be very clearly okay. A YouTube account is a little bit different because you're actually making content, producing that content, and putting it out. And that might run afoul of the law. So it's really a gray area. And what I would tell you, it's a gray area. Any income you earn, and if you're actually doing work, immigration could possibly ding you for it. The key thing to keep in mind is no one really knows, all right? Immigration will investigate your taxes or ask you for your taxes for you to expose yourself this way. But other than that, it's sort of an area where immigration has no idea, and it's going to be between you and the IRS. And that's all I can say about that for now. We got one more question, and we'll wrap this up. Can I take the citizen test in my native language? How long does it take to become a U.S. citizen? All right. Citizenship is for people who are residents. If you're married to an American citizen, it's 3 years. If you're not married to an American citizen, it's 5 years. You cannot take the English exam and the civics exam in your language unless you've had a green card for 15 years and you're over 50, or 20 years and over 50, or 15 years over the age of 55. So that's how that works. And at this point, what I would say, aside from that exception, you're going to have to do it in English, and you have to do it out loud, and you have to do a written in English test. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for checking in with us. Hit that like button, subscribe, share the info with your friends. Leave us a comment below. We answer questions all the time. We are the leading immigration voice on YouTube. We give a ton of free content. We're always hitting the most recent new information, and we got lots of followers. We'd love to have you join us. Thanks. Bye.